Hello, and welcome to the Total Mental Performance Podcast, the one and only mindset podcast dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs and coaches master their mindset, giving you insider access to industry leaders around their psychology, their campfire stories, and the mindset required to be successful in this business. I'm your host, Kieran O'Neill, mental performance coach and founder of Total Mental Performance, the world's fastest growing specialist mindset service dedicated to the fitness industry. So, without further ado, let's lean in and listen. So today we have a very good friend, TMP Evolution program client. So TMP Evolution is our one-to-one coaching. We have Sam Marriott, who is one of the world's biggest Marvel and DC comic nerds. He's helped hundreds of guys and girls get in crazy shape without giving up the burgers and the beers. Sam, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Mate, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really, really excited for this.
Yeah, fuck yeah. So run through with the audience how we met. How did you come across us?
Yeah, so I came across TMP and obviously you, Kieran, obviously through being in the inner circle. Obviously, a lot of the guys and girls in there have obviously been doing a lot of work with you. And obviously, it was just when I was in Dubai, we had a little bit of a mini sort of inner circle like meetup, just to go through some trainings and stuff like that. And obviously, you had a bit of a guest appearance there. And it was really, obviously, I know we did a training with the room, I think, just about, what do you feel like, or what do you feel like you're most insecure about? It was something like that. And obviously that was the first time we got introduced because you asked me some questions about my securities and stuff like that. And then, obviously I remember you just messaged me off the back of that. And then I think it was maybe the next day or the day after that I came to see you in your apartment. And yeah, it's just kind of gone from there really. So it's weird because obviously I kind of knew of you obviously through the inner circle, but mental performance coaching and stuff was never something I really considered that I needed let me reframe that. I didn't realize I needed until we obviously had that first conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And it was quite interesting when you came in for the first time when we first met, because the guy I see today and the guy that you are then are like two completely different animals. And something I see a lot is coaches, they get to a certain level and then they end up coming out to Dubai, which is like almost like the fitness coach capital at the moment. It's really crazy, like how everybody's here. And I almost get a little bit awed by the big buildings, the supercars, all the other coaches that have been in the game for many, many years. Everybody's in great shape. And when you've got that on top of your business that you're still trying to run, it can be quite intense and quite overwhelming. And I get a lot of coaches reach out to me when they come out here because it's a bit much. So just run me through what your experience was coming out when you first got out here, bearing in mind, you'd got your business to a really successful point that you were happy with. So yeah, just run me through what was going on in your mind.
Yeah, so my first experience of Dubai was crazy because everything you said just there about what Dubai is to most people, especially those in the fitness industry, really rang true. I remember getting to Dubai and feeling totally out of place. And I remember this was something that we spoke about quite in depth on our sort of first meeting. I kind of got out there and I think coming off the back of the third lockdown in the UK, where I'd scaled my business a lot quicker than I imagined. I wasn't prepared for it for sure. And then, being so routine at home, it was one of them where I came to Dubai and it was definitely an eye-opening experience, really. Not only because of just how surreal the place is, there's online coaches left, right, and center, the flash cars, the big money everywhere. It really made me not so much feel at home to start with. Like I didn't really feel settled in that place to begin with. And I think obviously I know we spoke about this in detail afterwards, but we really put that down to my sort of association with money and obviously my upbringing and things like that. But not just that as well. It was quite eye-opening for me because I realized when I got to Dubai that I was in no way, shape, or form ready to handle the level of business that I had and be able to scale it further. And obviously that's when we identified really that, I was maybe working too much. I didn't set boundaries. I didn't have proper time to recharge. And I kept ignoring the warning signs in favor of just getting my head down and continuing to work. And it was only really when I pulled myself out of the same environment I've been in throughout the entire third lockdown that I was able to realize that these signs were there and they were just so blatantly obvious. Obviously I was out there with my partner, Sophie, and she was having a fantastic time. She was seeing the other guys and girls from the inner circle, having a great time. But in that first week, I was just miserable as hell. because I was sat there in my head thinking, right, when am I getting my check-ins done? When can I do this work? I don't like being 4 hours ahead of my clients and stuff. Like, I need to be talking with them right now, that sort of thing. And, you know, looking back at it now, you know, I should have been going out there full well knowing that the systems and the tools I have in place to manage my business should have been able to cope with me being in a different location. And if anything, should have allowed me more time to enjoy the place I was in. But I couldn't do that at the time because I was just completely, well, as you put it yourself, I was completely like dysfunctional. So yeah, it was interesting when I got out there. And it was only really after our first and second meeting really was when things started to really kind of turn a corner. And yeah, like I said, it was a hard first week really going to Dubai. I think everyone, I know for a fact, everyone would have been looking at my stories like, oh, he must be doing really good. He's going to Dubai. He's got all this money. He's staying in these fancy places and stuff like that. And in reality, in my head, I was just completely switched off from everything. Like I was just completely flat and lifeless. So yeah, it was an eye-opening experience going to Dubai for the first time.
Let's talk about those warning signs. So everybody's warning signs are different, but there were some that you were ignoring. Which warning signs were you ignoring?
Yeah, so my first ones really were, I can never say this word properly, procrastination. It was taking me a long time to get the most simplest of tasks done. And I think that partly comes down to my systems as well. With my client check-ins, I had them spread over 5 days. When in reality, if I'd have just, you know, got my arse into gear, I could get them done. And what I'd now do is I can do them in 3 days, giving me more time for other things. So that was the first thing, because I was waking up every day and it really felt like I was doing a 9-to-5 job. I was waking up, I was doing check-ins, I was writing content, bam, every day, the exact same. I was waking up and I was probably immediately replying to messages straight away from clients, from leads in my DMs and stuff. And there was no real boundaries there. So it kind of felt like the minute I woke up, my head was in work mode until the minute I went to bed, which again was in work mode. And even then, I'd end up staying up late to do work and things like that. And that was happening even while I was in Dubai. So those were like the first real warning signs. And then probably the main one really was that I just felt completely drained. I didn't really have any enthusiasm for anything that I was doing. And, you know, I was in this beautiful city, seeing things I'd never seen before. And I just wasn't able to enjoy any of it at all. And I just couldn't pinpoint why. I was just doing X, Y, Z or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, like just very chill. And that was really, it was after that first meeting with you, I realized, I was like, I feel completely lifeless right now. Like I feel like what most people in a normal 9-to-5 job feel like. This is my own business. I should not be feeling like this.
Absolutely. And a lot of coaches aim to build their online businesses so they can travel. And then they get there and they build the business to maybe a great revenue number or client number, but don't necessarily think about the insecurities that are driving them to work so hard. And then they don't actually build the business in a way that's sustainable. They build it in a way that makes lots of money. So then when they've built the business in a way in which it makes lots of money, they then go on holiday abroad and they can't enjoy a single thing. So it's like, what's the point? You might as well stay in England, stay in the UK, stay in America, Australia, or wherever you are in the world. You might as well not leave. You might as well just stay in that spot. So often what I see is that's not necessarily just a systems issue, but it's a mindset issue. Because if you don't build the systems to support the lifestyle that you want, and if you don't identify the life you do or don't want, then you're going to build systems that you're basically going to build systems around your insecurities, systems that make you work really hard, systems that make you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing when you don't necessarily need to.
Yeah.
And something I see a lot is that guilt and shame around taking time off. I remember I had to reframe downtime for you to realize and appreciate it, and the difference we saw off the back of that when you actually was able to recharge and just read a book, just slow down. It was amazing.
100%, mate. And you know, something I very much realized after our first session was that I was essentially just building a business to be a cash generator. It was not a business that fulfilled me. It was not a business that allowed me to put my time and attention into other passions, other hobbies, and stuff like that. And it got to a point, I suppose, where I'd built this thing. And don't get me wrong, obviously I was happy with the growth and stuff. You can never complain about business growth, but it was the fact that I didn't manage it well enough on my side to make sure it could continue to scale. And it really got to a point where the business just took over my entire life, and it really shouldn't have been like that. And you're right in what you're saying. We had to do a lot of work on reframing what downtime was for me and stuff like that. And I think one of the biggest things I remember you saying to me, and it was like a light bulb moment. It was like a relief for me. It was after that first meeting, because I think for a long time before that, when I was just feeling down most days and pretty lifeless, I was starting to wonder whether I had some mental health issues. Was I depressed? Was I anxious and stuff? I'd never suffered with any of that before, so I had no idea. I couldn't make sense of it. And I found I was getting really snappy at the tiniest little things, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And for a long time, I thought it might have been something to do with my mental health. But, I remember you quite clearly saying when I came to your apartment, it's not mental health, it's mental dysfunction. You've got no systems in place, you've got no boundaries, you've got no downtime, things like that. And it's like you're just constantly overworking. And so your brain's just not firing, it's not working properly. And that's why it's struggling to make sense of even the tiniest of things or remaining logical in situations. And that was a huge moment of relief for me, because it kind of made me realize, I was like, oh, it's actually this. And then that's where obviously the groundwork started from there. And obviously that's what's led to where we are now.
Let's go a layer deeper. So what did you realize you believed about yourself to be true as a person that was driving all of that, driving that hard work, driving that, building the business how you built it to be a cash cow, not something that you loved? What was the belief about you as a person?
Yep. So I was strongly driven, and I didn't realize this until we did some deep work. I was strongly driven by the fact that I never thought I was good enough. I always thought I was an imposter. And that started from years ago when I used to play football. So for listeners and stuff, I told this story to Kieran, and this was a big light bulb moment for us. When I used to play football as a kid, I used to love playing football. I played for a very competitive team, quite a lot of competitive teams. I was being looked at by professional football academies and stuff like that. So there was always some level of pressure on me. But some of the management that I had and some of the pressure I had from other players and things like that, it often led me to believe as a goalkeeper, and goalkeepers in football are often targeted. There's only one goalkeeper on the pitch. There's 10 outfield players, but a goal goes in, goalie often gets the flag for it, right? Even if the ball has to go through the other 10 players first. So I often got a lot of stick for conceding goals or whatever it may be, and got into arguments with the management and stuff. And it was often reinforced in my head, at least anyway, that I just wasn't good enough to play football. And when I got to 18 years old and stuff, when I could have moved on to play into the adult leagues and stuff, I quit there because I just didn't have the enjoyment there anymore. It felt too much like a chore. And now I look back on it, that's because I got to a point where I just felt like I was not good enough anymore. And it wasn't necessarily the case. It was more to do with the fact of the environment around me was persuading me that I was not good enough. So I had to step away. But then coming into the fitness industry, I think I carried that with me. And especially when I was coming into it at an angle where, I want my clients, and I had this right from the start because, I come from a very sociable background. I spent most of my weekends with my family in pubs growing up. So, I'm used to that sort of environment. And I wanted that angle to come at when I became a coach. But coming into a fitness industry where, a lot of coaches, PTs are bodybuilders, they compete in shows, they do photo shoots, things like that. I always felt like I was completely out of place because I was trying to coach people in an entirely different way to the standard meal plan, chicken, rice and broccoli, fasted cardio in the morning, that sort of stuff. And even though I continue to push, the opposite message for myself and for my business, there were a lot of times in the early days where even I didn't believe it myself, and I genuinely believed that I was an imposter. And really, it came to a point where that imposter syndrome came back and hit hard once I hit one of my biggest targets for business earlier this year. When I reached 50 clients, that was a big milestone for me because I thought that was like a long-term target. I didn't expect to get there so quickly. And it just literally happened pretty much within the space of a couple of weeks. I went from like 30 to 50, just like that. And when I got there, it was kind of one of them moments where I was like, okay, I've reached this, but I don't feel like I've reached it. Like, I don't feel like this is what, a 50 client strong business should look like. And it was at that point again that the imposter syndrome started to set in hard. And then that stopped me from, being consistent with content, from pushing my message more. And that just led to more and more frustration because I kept thinking in my own head that I'm a lot worse coach than what I actually am. I was doing a worse job than what I actually am. I'm not giving the right service to my clients, things like that. So that's where it all kind of started. And then that's what it led to, obviously, before, starting to work with you, Kieran.
Thank you for sharing that. And think about that younger you, that younger goalkeeper you. What was the message that he needed to hear that allowed you to let go of that imposter syndrome and kick on how you're kicking on?
Message he probably needed to hear was that, everyone like makes mistakes. And again, massive one that, we've taken away was you never truly lose. You either win or you learn. And if I had have had that message put across to me when I was a kid, then anytime I would have made a mistake or any time that I thought I maybe could have played better, I could have easily analyzed my game and gone, okay, so maybe I need to work on this in training, or I need to do this and that. And that would have made my experience a lot better. It would have given me a lot more drive and a lot more hunger for the game. And I would have continued playing it and I would have continued enjoying it. But instead, I was in an environment where, I can't really pin blame on people in particular. I'm growing up with teenage lads. They're obviously going to be a little bit more cynical. But, if I'd have grown up with that message as opposed to, oh, that was shit, that was terrible, like, you're fucking awful, things like that, then it would have been a completely different story. No doubt about it. If I'd have grown up with that message, things would have been a lot different for me right now. The imposter syndrome would not have been a big factor in my life up until this point.
It's fascinating because something I haven't really spoken about much, but I was a football referee for maybe 3 years, 4 years. When I was a kid, I came to the conclusion that, well, I can work in Sainsbury's for £5 an hour, or I can get paid 25 to 35 pounds an hour coaching football. And yeah, it's a little bit harder, but I thought, well, if I only have to work 3-4 hours a weekend to save me tons of hours, I'm going to do it. And fuck me, was that a big baptism by fire? Jesus Christ, like that. I think football's changing, and I think it's a good thing. But back then, like the savagery of coaches, of players, of teams, like I think both for men and for women, or for boys and for girls, when I was refereeing, and there is a lot of, you see the goalkeeper getting blamed for everything. That's quite normal. Coaches screaming at kids using ultimately away motivation, so pain motivation, like scaring them and fear. And I think I'd love to. Does any way we get the statistics on how much trauma was caused on a football pitch? It would be fascinating because we used to see it week in, week out. I think the culmination for me was I remember refereeing a game where there was 6, I think it was under 6s or under 7-year-olds, and all these kids are trying to break. There was like a load of academy scouts there, and but the two teams weren't academy teams, so they were really pushing these poor kids. And one of them shouted, "Snap him in half!" And I stopped the game and I said, "You got to go." And his team were 6-2 up. I guess, what do you mean? I was like, you cannot tell a 6-year-old to snap us another 6-year-old in half. Yeah. You got to go. So I picked up the ball and I said, "You got to go or I'm going to abandon the game." He went, "Really?" And I went, "Yeah, you got 5 seconds." And there was this awkward standoff and then he left. And it was that close. But then he was staring at me from the car park the whole game. And I was just thinking, this is kids' football. Like, it's absolutely insane. So those environments, and any environments we really grow up in, whether that's school, whether that's culture, whether that's sports, anything you do for fun, they do shape us. Because when we're kids, we're like sponges. And that's when we're learning how everything works. We're learning how the world works. We're learning how, people operate like this. Do they? Or is it just those people operate like that? And it's a fascinating place to sort of reflect on. And yeah, I'd be fascinated to know, even our listeners, like just drop a comment, drop a link, drop a comment or a DM or whatever. What was your experience with sports? Because I see a lot of coaches, their backgrounds did start in sports, and they come across and they go, right, well, how can I translate the way that I move my physical body and get me feeling good, and how can I translate it to others? But I think that also drives that driven personality, which is great, but when coupled with an insecurity or a fear of not being good enough, I think that's what drives many successful coaches to get to a certain level, and then they hit a glass ceiling and they can't scale from there, because they have that work ethic, which is you have to train hard or you have to work hard. So you put that in, you push. But because you're not physically exhausting yourself, you kind of think you can keep working. You think you can keep pushing on. But
Yeah.
I use the analogy of a psychological bodybuilder. Bodybuilders have to have off seasons. They can't compete year round, but for some reason, fitness coaches and fitness entrepreneurs think they can. They think they can just, be stage fit year round, and it just doesn't make sense. the joke I use is you're gonna end up pulling an emotional hamstring. Like you can't keep operating at that speed or at that pace. And I see a lot of coaches who are under what I call just psychological fatigue. It's not necessarily a mental health issue. They've just been lifting too much weight. They've been running too much, and they need to calm down, slow down, and recover.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. And I think for me as well, maybe where the problems really kind of built up for me, I think it comes partly from my sporting background where, I got to a belief where I simply cannot fuck up anymore, or I will continue getting slack for it. So then that was part of the thing. But then at the same time, coming into an industry where, hard work is idolized, but then it's also pushed beyond the point that is, as we know now, is acceptable. Everyone talks about the whole hustle hard, never take a day off thing. So I think that mentality of bodybuilding and just of, the ultra robotic fitness world, combined with, my sporting background, where again, I had this belief that I simply can't fail anymore through fear of being judged by others. All of that together, that's what kind of created this entire, what I would call probably a clusterfuck, that really kind of prevented me from growing any further once I reached that ceiling, back in June before I came to see you.
That's it. And it all builds up and it all culminates. And then you sort of sit there and you lying on the bed, looking at the ceiling. I call these now what moments. You've achieved something. You're like, oh, now what? Because when you tie yourself too much to a goal, it's like, what's the fucking point when you get there? Whereas if you can strive satisfied, that's a lot better, because it's like, yeah, sure, I'm working towards something, but I'm enjoying the life I have on the way. If we put our happiness on the future, on outcomes too much, you're setting yourself up to fail. And I think there is this fear of taking downtime. And also I think part of the fear of taking downtime is people have got insecurities they're not willing to face yet. And it's easy to distract ourselves when we're working hard, really easy. But when you're taking downtime, you have to listen, you have to stop, and feelings come up. Whereas when you're constantly busy working, you don't have time to deal with those emotions, to deal with those fears, and you almost push them away. And it's almost like the easier thing to do is to keep working and keep pushing. When actually, if you do what is easy, life will be hard. If you do what's hard, life will be easy. It's like taking downtime for some coaches is an achievement, not because they can't, but because psychologically they put these barriers in their way.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And I think as well, again, it all comes down to just the entire business world right now. I think just the way social media is, the way the fitness industry is, it portrays this idea that you have to be working every day. And that if you're not working every day, you obviously don't love your job. Things like that. And I think when you obviously run an online coaching business where you have clients around the world, you kind of feel like you have an obligation to be in contact with them all the time, especially ones in different time zones. But in reality, like you've always said to me, you cannot serve from an empty vessel, right? And if you are constantly working, then, there are going to be holes, there are going to be leaks everywhere. You're just simply not going to be able to function properly. And that was a big learning lesson for me, really, was learning to set up those boundaries and, be honest, like with my clients and with everyone else, like, look, after 8 p.m., my notification's going off. That's my downtime. On weekends, I'll probably have like 1 or 2 recharge days where, again, you might not be able to contact me as much, but it's for the purpose of being a better coach for you, is for making sure I give my energy and give more to you guys. And that was kind of the way I had to reframe it. And after I did that, it kind of felt like I had a massive weight just lifted off my shoulders. It was a really, really big moment for me.
And also, we've got to talk about leadership, because you're in a leadership position. As a coach, you're there to lead your clients. And quite frankly, it might sound a bit harsh, but you're a bit of a fraud if you tell your clients you should be taking a day off or 2 a week, you should be taking downtime, you should be recovering, and you're still working at an insane pace. Like, how dare you?
Yeah, exactly.
How fucking cheeky is that to say you should be taking downtime? They're not taking any for yourself. Like, let's be honest. We can only look at the brutal facts, and that's what high performers do. They look at the brutal facts and they go, "This is the reality of what's going on." And if you're not congruent with your message, and you're not congruent with who you are and the way that you coach, then that little cognitive dissonance that's going on internally, it starts to get bigger and it starts to get bigger. And that's where imposter syndrome starts to grow. So do not sit there and tell your clients to take downtime and not take time out for yourself, because that is a genuine fraud.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And do you know what is it was quite funny, because I remember what was it? Maybe about 6 weeks ago, I did a webinar. So I do like a monthly webinar for my clients and stuff, right? And the first one actually was on stress management. And we talked about the concept of recharge days and, taking downtime and stuff. And I remember one of my clients messaged me off the back of that webinar, and it's quite funny because there was times like maybe about a few weeks beforehand where some of my clients would have to tell me to take time off and rest. And they're like, you shouldn't feel guilty for that. Like, everyone needs days off. You tell us to have days off. Like, you need them yourself. So I think for a lot of coaches who are probably going to be listening to this and probably also struggle to take time off, you're often making the situation worse in your own head. And that roughly comes down to like the thought, like your own thoughts sort of thing, right? It's your own thoughts that create a certain perception of a situation. And that's something I learned from one of the books that you sent me. And in my head, I'm thinking, I can't take time off because then my clients will feel like I'm lazy, I'm not working hard enough, I'm not providing for them enough. In reality, they're all turning around like, mate, you need some time off. Like, go chill. Like, you can't work every day sort of thing. And, these are the conversations that you need to have with your clients and stuff, really. And also just to realize that a lot of what you're thinking in your own head, you're making far worse, because that's your own thoughts. You're creating that perception in your own head.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's about leadership. Lead by example. Don't tell people what to do, show them. Like, I even say to my clients, I'm always upfront and honest. Do I experience overwhelm sometimes? Well, yeah, of course. I'm a human being, but I don't let that cripple me. And I have the tools and techniques in order to deal with that. I have my boardroom that I can lean on to help me work through that. And by leading through example with my journaling, in fact, I can tell you, I'll pick any day of this year and last year. I can tell you exactly how I was feeling that day. I can tell you exactly what was going on that day. I can tell you the wins, the losses, and the learnings, because I'm that meticulous with my journaling every single night, because that is such a life-changing tool. I know exactly what's going on. That's what enables me to hit peak performance consistently, because I'm aware. Now, I can't sit here and tell you to journal if I don't do it myself, It doesn't make sense. Sam, I'd like you to paint us a picture, because if you could paint a picture of where you were when you were in that headspace of, I have to work all the time, I'm stressed, I'm dull, and you hit that target and you'd reach that now what moment. Just paint a picture of where you were there. And now, with the systems, the tools, the strategies, and the deep work that we've done on your mindset, what does that difference look like?
I mean, it's huge. So, I came to you really just with myself being all over the place. In a lot of ways, I was essentially winging it. I got to this point, I'd taken on so many clients, but at that point, from a business perspective, I wasn't managing my time well. My onboarding system was not the greatest. My support system was just responsive or reactive as opposed to being structured. And then with that, because I just didn't have consistent time off myself, didn't have consistent days off every week or set my own boundaries, it was very much working the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed every single day. And every day just felt the exact same. And it was just, by the time I get to Sunday, I'd be pretty worn out, but I'd already be working still. So it's straight into another working week and we carry on sort of thing. And at that point, I was very much like lifeless. I was getting up every day. I was like really tired, mentally quite drained. I wasn't really in it, so to speak, with any task I was doing. I was not, fully there with it in my own head. My head was basically elsewhere. And I was just kind of coasting through day to day, just not really caring about what I was doing and didn't really have a love for what I was doing. So, that was where I was, back then, back in sort of June time or whatever, before I came to see you. But now it's a completely different story. Essentially, I now work less hours than before, but I mean, my income's better, my client numbers are better as well, even after a rough couple of months and stuff. But, I'm now effectively working less hours, but I'm producing better work. I'm feeling more fulfilled because I'm working with, my ideal clients. I'm reframing everything in the sense of, oh, I've got to do this. I'm reframing everything now and going, no, I get to do this. Like, this is my thing. This is my business. I've built this. This is my thing. So I'm delivering more for my clients now. I'm giving more energy to them. I'm much more productive, and I'm able now to kind of set boundaries in place so that, I can relax in the evenings. I can spend my weekends going to watch hockey or spending time with friends and family, things like that. And just now there's a lot more enjoyment to everything I do. I get to Monday feeling pretty rested after a nice weekend, doing some fun stuff, spending time on hobbies, other passions. I get to Monday and I'm fired up. I'm ready to get stuck in. I'm ready to, get stuck in with my clients, make sure I'm giving the best service possible, giving them the praise that they need, coaching them to the best of my ability, sort of thing. And, every day I'm posting stuff on social media. I'm portraying the message that I wholly believe in myself as a coach. And I'm just basically doing my best every day now to continue to push my message, knowing that I can bring something to the fitness industry that is going to benefit people and that is going to get, the industry away from the awful side of things that we've seen so much over the past 10, 15 years. And essentially now I'm living every day with fulfillment, whereas before I was living every day with dread. And that's the huge thing, really.
It's a big shift. And I always make the quite aggressive metaphor of, would this person I am today not clean out the person I was however long ago? And I know for a fact it would be over pretty quick between you and the Sam that first walked in here. So kudos to that. And yeah, mate, it's been inspiring and I'm dead proud of you. So thank you for going on that journey and entrusting us with that. What does this phrase, no, don't forget the company for a minute, but what does the phrase total mental performance mean to you?
To me, it's the ability to be very self-aware of what's happening to you right now, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, how that's affecting your performance, and ultimately what you need to do to shift yourself to a higher mental performance state to allow you to experience life a lot better, to feel fulfilled, to get enjoyment, and to be the best at your job possible.
Yeah, nice. Well, mate, look, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to come and find you, where can they find you?
So easy enough to find me. So just at Sam Marriott PT on Instagram, 2 R's, 2 T's, in case you struggle to spell Marriott, because most people do. But yeah, that's the best place to come and find me.
Sam, thank you ever so much for coming on.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.